Hey everyone, it's Paul here. I thought I would follow up last week's video with some more fundamentals of music theory. In the last video we covered 5 of the fundamentals of music theory, which were pitch, scale, pulse and rhythm, melody and chords. In this video I'm going to show you how we write music on the page. The main reason we write music down is because music is collaborative and it's a really great way of sharing music with others. Stop! What? You're under arrest. Written music is a language that is universal. If I had a piece of music in my head and had to teach it to another musician who didn't speak my language, without anything notated, then the process would be quite challenging. If we've got the music written down, however, we would be able to both look at the music together, and because of the shared language of notated music, we would be able to both learn and play the piece. So, to be able to do this, we need to be able to show how those first 5 fundamentals can be written down. Starting with pitch, we need to show how high or low those notes are. Let's start with a circle and a line. The line represents the pitch and the circle highlights which pitch. On a single line it's easy. The circle above the line is higher, the circle below the line is lower. This method gives us 3 pitches to choose, so let's add another line which will give us 5 pitches. Adding more lines gives us more pitches, but this gives us a potential problem. Instruments like pianos have got 88 keys, so this poses a problem. Not only how many lines we would need, but how we would realistically be able to read where the circle was on any one of those lines. So instead of that, we use 5 lines, which we call a stave or a staff, and then a series of symbols called glyphs, which we use to identify different pitches on the stave. There are 3 main clefs which we use to identify the pitches. The C clef, which shows us where middle C is pitched, the G clef shows us where G above middle C is pitched, and the F clef shows us where F below middle C is pitched. We could place these clefs anywhere on the stave to give a different range of notes, but we generally stick to these commonly used positions, giving them names: treble clef, alto clef, tenor clef and bass clef. They are named because the notes in the stave fall mostly in the comfortable vocal ranges for those clefs. Typically, most instruments or voices will use either the treble or bass clef, and they have a special relationship when you place them on top of each other, with an invisible line in the middle. We call this the grand staff. This is typically the way music is notated for keyboard instruments such as pianos, harpsichords and organs, and use one stave for each hand, the right hand playing the notes on the treble clef line and the left hand playing the notes on the bass clef line. Individual instruments then just use one stave to suit their instruments. The flute would use treble clef, the bass guitar would use the bass clef, the trombone might use tenor clef, and the viola would use alto clef. When we look at a stave, the first thing to notice is that we have 5 lines and 4 spaces. On each line and in each space we can place a note. For the treble clef, the notes on the lines are E, G, B, D and F, and the notes in the spaces are F, A, C and E. For the bass clef, the notes on the lines are G, B, D, F, A, and in the spaces A, C, E and G. One way we can help remember these notes is to use acronyms for each. The bass clef, we can use Great Big Dragons Fly Around and All Cows Eat Grass. And for the treble clef, we can use Every Green Bus Drives Fast and Face. So that covers the notes that are in the stave, and we can extend above and below the stave if we need higher or lower notes. We just have to add more lines to the stave. We call these ledger lines, and they allow us to have a full range of notes without the need of constantly changing clef to stay within the stave. This covers pitch and scale from my last video, so we need to cover pulse and rhythm now. As I mentioned then, pulse is the steady beat that goes through a piece of music, and it is often that beat that you feel in a piece of music, especially if you move along with that beat. Getting that feeling onto a page written down is one of the hardest things to convey to another musician, as a lot of the time it is down purely to feeling. We can, however, give instructions on how to feel that pulse, and there are a number of different ways we can do that. The first way we can do that is through a long tradition of tempo markings. In the Baroque period, these markings were often the name of a dance, such as allemande or sarabande, which would give the musicians at the time a strong indication of the speed or tempo the music should be played. In classical music, it's customary to indicate the tempo by using words which are often in Italian. This is because it was the language used most commonly by composers in the 17th and 18th centuries, and that tradition has largely continued up to today. Some of these would range from larghissimo, or very, very slowly, lento, slowly, moderato, at a moderate pace, vivace, lively and fast, prestissimo, very, very fast. As I've said already, this does leave a lot of scope for a variety of tempos to be performed. Andante, for example, translates to a walking pace. Each one of us will walk at a different speed, so might have a different idea of how fast to take that tempo. This isn't a massive problem, and just comes down to an individual musician's instincts as a performer, and would just be their interpretation of their music. If we want to get more precision in our tempos, we can indicate an exact tempo marking. This is measured in beats per minute, and will give a more exact instruction on the tempo a piece of music should be played. Of course, without a metronome to give the exact pulse, this is still down to individual interpretation, though it's easy to be quite close to the exact number through a bit of educated guesswork. If we were looking for 138 beats per minute, we can get pretty close. We know 60 beats per minute is 1 beat per second. We have this almost instinctively, as it's constantly around us with clocks, watches, alarm clocks and timers ticking away. Doubling that up to 120 beats per minute is a reasonably easy leap to take. We're then only 18 beats per minute away from our target of 138, which isn't a lot. It's at this point we can start to make a pretty good guesstimate to the increase and see how far out we are. Not too bad, I'd say. As for rhythm, we need to be able to show how to play different lengths of notes. To do this, we have a number of different symbols to show how long or short a note is. Depending on the time signature of a piece of music will depend how these are counted, so for the purpose of this video we'll be looking at those as a 4/4 time signature. We're going to start with the semibreve or whole note. In 4/4 it lasts for 4 beats. This is our longest note. We then have the minim or half note, which lasts for 2 beats. Each of these is half the length of a semibreve. Next is the crotchet or quarter note. This is half the length again of the minim, and there are 4 crotchets in a semibreve. Then we have the quaver or 8th note. Once again we are at half the length of a crotchet, and we will fit 8 quavers into a semibreve. Next is the semiquaver or 16th note, which is half the length of a quaver, and there are 16 of these in a semibreve. We can continue down this path into ever decreasing lengths to the demi-semiquaver and the hemi-demi-semiquaver, and could go even further to the 128th, 256th, and so on and so on. We could also go the other way as well and double the length of our longest note, the semibreve, to a breve, which is twice the length of a semibreve. Double a breve again and you'll have a longer, and once more and you'll have a maxima, though those last two have mostly been left in the 13th and 14th century compositions. We then have a series of other symbols which we can use to alter these lengths to fit into our music. We have a tie, which will join 2 notes together, combining their values. We have a dot, which when placed after a note will add half the value of the note to its length. And if that wasn't enough, you can double dot the note to add another quarter of the length to it again. We can also squeeze 3 notes into the space of 2, or stretch them into the space of 4, or 13 into the space of 2. And that is a bit of a deeper look at the fundamentals: pitch, scale, pulse and rhythm. This is of course the basics, and like the majority of time with music theory, once you have mastered the fundamentals and know all the rules, that is the point that you can do what I think is the best bit about music theory: break the rules. I hope you've enjoyed this Music Bites video about the basics of music notation. I'll be back next week with more music bites and breakdowns of more music theory. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section below. And if you have any subjects you want me to cover in future videos, just let me know. Thanks for watching, and as always, Fide, fide, fide. If you have enjoyed this video, why not subscribe so you never miss the latest Music Bites videos as they are uploaded each week. While you're waiting for the next one, have a look at some of my other videos, and you can follow me on social media as well.